today I have the joy of holding a conversation with Dave Pahma, who is an ex-athlete and retired firefighter, the host of the Dave Pamah podcast, where he and his guests highlight ways in which people can improve their lives. He is a personal coach who helps people build resilience by using fitness and mindfulness, and is the author of the book Firefighting from Within. So I know you're going to love this today. So let's get into it. Dave, welcome to Under the Rug.
Oh, well, thanks for having me. Thanks for having me, Nalini, and great pleasure meeting you again. I know you had a great episode on my podcast, and I'm really great pleasure for you to invite me here as well.
Thank you so much. Yeah, I loved being on your podcast. We had so much fun. We had so much to talk about. And then I think we were like, okay, I think we might need a round two.
That's right. There's about 10 rounds in a heavyweight fight, so we've got a few rounds to go through. No, I'm just kidding.
So tell us a little bit about your background. Where are you from? Tell us about your family.
Yeah. Well, I'm from London. I was born in an area called Stoke Newington in London, and then I grew up in London Bridge, an area called the Borough in London, which is now a very tourist area.
Are your parents originally from London then?
No. My mum's from the Caribbean, from a small island called St. Vincent and the Grenadines, and my dad is from an island on the Indian Ocean called Mauritius, which is it's not far from Madagascar, off the east coast.
Well, my surname, my hubby's last name, Tranquim, is Mauritian.
So, is it? Okay, yeah, that sounds familiar. Yeah. I think I've seen that.
Yeah. Tranquim, apparently, is how you say it.
Right, so it's French, or Creole, which is Creole is like broken French, basically. So but my dad's surname, he's from a similar background to your dad. He's from Indian background, Indian, Mauritian, and Hindu.
My
goodness! So it's derived from that.
And then siblings-wise?
I grew up with one sister and two brothers.
Okay, so now your biography, I was having a read of that the other day, and it actually references really severe bullying that you experienced as a young child. I know we're kind of going straight into it, but I would really love it if you could just share with us a bit more about that journey, that experience for you.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's not the same as how I probably would put some of the workplace bullying that I've experienced, but workplace is kind of like a lot of people experience some kind of conflict in some way. So it depends on the culture of the organisation or corporate, how it's all, But with the school, it was typical school bullying. But mine really, I think most of it, I mean, I did experience some racism as well from society, because there's a lot going on politically. It's a bit like saying Brexit, what's going on and things like that. So it's with the migration and that, there was a lot of kind of protests and marches and things like that. But to be honest, with the school, it was personal, and then I found out later in life I had dyslexia, and it all made sense. So because some teachers they didn't really understand dyslexia, they were even like pointing a finger at me saying, oh well, and then I was being a bit of a class clown, so it rubbed it in even more. Oh, Dave's being so it really although it's classic textbook stuff that happened to me, I can really say that some of it was towards the traits, of dyslexia, as opposed to the colour of my skin. But because I didn't know too much from primary school days, 6,
really
7, 8 years old.
That's interesting. Sandro and his family, so my hubby, they fled the war in Mozambique and moved from Mozambique into Zimbabwe when my hubby was about 6 years of age.
Right, yeah.
And then his parents, obviously sent him to school, which for him was a huge adjustment, because he was from a Portuguese-speaking nation to Zimbabwe, which was an English-speaking nation. So he couldn't speak the language, couldn't understand anything.
Was it still? No, it wasn't. It wasn't Rhodesia. It actually changed to Zimbabwe.
It had changed. It had changed to Zimbabwe.
Because I remember when it was Rhodesia, and I actually was friends with some people my age that I think they left when it went from Rhodesia to Zimbabwe.
There was a mass exodus.
That's right.
From Zimbabwe. When it switched over to local rule. But for him, I mean, he was bullied excessively by teachers, telling him that he was an idiot and would probably end up in a special needs school.
Yeah, well, I did actually end up in a special needs school for about a year and a half. For
Wow.
that reason you just told me, that even the teacher was saying, well, he's an idiot because of the class clown bit, because I'm covering up the fact that, my academic for that age, wasn't, I wasn't reading as well as, and things, were
Yeah.
slowing down. I got criticised for a few things. So that's what happened really.
So what was the driving force for you then to actually end up um, becoming an athlete? Like, how did that sort of steer you?
Yeah, well, just before, when my last year, say, or two in primary school, when I was looking for a way out, because things weren't going well then, but I was still keen to be at school. I wasn't, totally sort of, I hate this now because of the bullying or whatever, and the teachers saying I'm this and that. They picked up on it and said, well, there's behavioural things, not obviously attaching it to dyslexia, maybe because it wasn't, because there's different grades of dyslexia as well, so it probably wasn't enough for them to say, well, he's not even spell completely right,
Yeah.
because those days it was just only, oh, he can't spell, it's dyslexia, but now it's
Right.
lots of things now that they detect it with. So did the sports day in primary school, and I was winning sprints and long jump and things like that. And then they called me up in assembly, because usually it's because, oh, Dave did something stupid today. Look, come up in assembly and tell them what you did. But this time it was,
Wow.
Dave came first in this, and well done, and here's your medal and blah blah blah. And then the
Wow.
self-esteem went up a bit. But then I
Yeah.
went to a normal comprehensive school where they were already talking about, well, what should we do about Dave's kind of like, something's wrong with Dave at school with the blah, blah, blah. And he obviously picked up on the bullying when I said, look, such picking on me, blah, blah, blah. When you're younger, you say that. And then, so my first year in a normal comprehensive school, which is in the same area, I got bullied. The severe bullying got even more, really, really
Mm.
bad. And I raised it. And but then academically, I wasn't really well with maths and things like that. I wasn't really wasn't a problem. It was only
Wow.
just like the English and the comprehension. So that's when I got moved to a special school. I said, well, put him in a special school. He needs a smaller class so he can get on, and maybe that'll be the answer. Of course, they do have special education alongside the mainstream in the same school these days for
Right.
dyslexia, but
Yep.
that wasn't the case with me. But then that school I went to was I had to stay there like a boarding school, but run by the local authority in London. And they let me kind of develop and do what I needed to do, because the part of it was, oh, let's get Dave back up to speed with what's going on. And they saw the improvement immediately, and they said, well, Dave, they had a running track there. I was playing football for the school and things like that, but obviously running was something that was in my head, in terms of I already did that at prime school and got a good pat on the back for it.
Wow.
So I think I'm going to beat everyone, and they said, right, they're going to have a race. And I started beating everyone. Then they had this thing called a 5-star award. We do things like long jump and blah, blah, blah. I joined a local athletics club, which was new, and I was just winning everything for my age there. And then so it took off from there. But I was doing other sports because that's an area that I felt I can just express
Yeah.
myself physically,
Express yourself.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. So although, I didn't excel as much with the other sports, football, cricket, um, I enjoyed taking part in the other sports. And
Wow.
then I did, when I went back to mainstream comprehensive school, because then they said, well, hang on a minute, Dave's not having any kind of these issues, and then let's get him to comprehensive school, get him back up to speed. My IQ was quite, a little bit above average for my age then. They measured all that, because that was all part of the kind of special needs assessment that they were
Wow.
giving me. And so the assessments from whoever the education psychologist was, no, he's got to get back to mainstream. He's doing everything that's normal, and in fact he's doing well with his athletics as well, that sort of thing. And then I joined the athletics club, which was the
Wow.
best in the country. I was around Olympic athletes, which I think I mentioned.
Incredible.
And so 16, I was one of the fastest runner in the country. And I was excelling at school, but then I didn't understand why I weren't passing exams, because of the short-term
Mm.
memory side of things, and
Yeah,
revision and
right.
stuff like that.
And did that bother you? Because even though you were excelling in your athletic
Yeah,
field.
it did in a way, because in athletics, the general route was that a lot of people did an academic, and then some, a good majority of them went to university afterwards, or
Right.
they did a job where it, matched what they were doing. So you needed like they called it O levels then, but the GCSEs, high grades, to get into work in a bank or wherever,
Yeah.
So those were the kind of jobs they were doing, and
Right.
there was some hands-on type jobs, and obviously I looked at joining the fire service. It's kind of like naturally physically fit, and I got excited at school, you know, especially when I went back to mainstream school. It's what, you know, they're doing careers now when you're 15, 16. So
Yeah,
what
of
do you want to do?
course.
So it's either something sporty, like be a physio or a coach, or whatever. Obviously I'm doing coaching now, or something like, oh, the fire service looks good, you know, wow, you know, it's kind of, you know, obviously for
I
a
love
kid's,
that.
someone of boyhood's dream, you know, it's like looking at that because you, I don't know, maybe the environment and the toys you're playing with and things you're
Yeah.
watching on TV, you know. Maybe I'll blame Thunderbirds for it. That's true. No, I'm joking. But you know, it was like that. Actually, I should bring that back as quite.
They
I
should.
think another movie.
I used to love
Yeah,
Thunderbirds. Oh
yeah,
my
yeah.
gosh.
So maybe that's what, you know. And I just had a sense of wanting to do something, and also a sense of justice from the bullying, because I did still receive that bullying, but it got better as I excelled in sports, because people were recognizing, well, he's good at something, and he's
Right.
getting, like, the whole school and the headmaster knows about him now. You know, it's like. But I did, like, one time, it included some racism when I got knocked out in someone who punched me on the way home. You know, one of the school kids.
Wow.
This is at the back when I went back at mainstream,
Oh, wow.
and I was knocked out. And then you know, he said, "I want to kill the bee black so and so," like that.
Yeah.
So
Wow.
yeah, it was like that.
And that would have been high school.
That's high school. So that's 15. I was about 15 when that happened. And in actual fact, I stopped everything. I almost wanted to quit school. It just happened
Sure.
it went on for about 2 weeks, and then I stopped sports for that whole summer. It was just before the summer. And then I went back. I think I was doing some boxing training. There's a boxing club near me that yeah, I kind of got fit back again. And then I think the self-esteem got back, and I've forgotten about it. And I just went back and
You've had to be a resilient human being from the time you were quite little.
yes, yeah, yeah, yeah. That's right. Yeah.
Right. Isn't it interesting how you work in resilience now?
Yeah,
After,
yeah. I mean, to be honest, I weren't noticing it, to be honest.
no.
And I can't say that I've never been stressed, because I have, and I've done a stressful job. And you try and sort of put it to the back of your mind, but if you're a human being, as much as you
Yeah.
want to be as resilient as you can, you know, you're
Yeah.
still vulnerable. You still can,
Absolutely.
you know.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, so you have this childhood dream then of becoming a firefighter.
Yeah.
I love that you have a rooster in the
Yeah, sorry
background.
about that. Yeah,
No,
so
it's
the
delightful.
neighbours only just put it in there about 3 weeks ago. So
Okay,
everything that I used to do in this house is
so I'm just going to let the audience know that you live this lavish life between London and the Philippines, and that you are not in London at the moment with a
no, no,
rooster next
no,
door.
that's
You are
right.
actually in the Philippines.
That's right, exactly. Yeah, yeah.
I had visions of people
So,
going, "Oh, roosters in East London. Didn't know they existed."
well,
Um,
there might be one or two, but
okay, so you had this, this young adult, I guess, fantasy maybe of joining the firefighting world,
yeah.
but that actually became a reality for you. So talk to us about those early days of, being in the firefighting world, and the differences between the reality of it and your, I guess, your little boy dream of it.
Yeah, you got to do some stuff around the station, you know, some routine work. But then when there's a fires, you got to, you know,
Yep.
obviously attend. They don't tell you everything in the books about how to, fight the fire. But you know, I have to say that I did experience some bullying, and it
Hmm.
was unusual, because there is a lot of fun taking. It's that type of job, you know. So of course there is humour. There's a lot of humour, and I don't think that side will ever go away. But you know,
Yeah.
there's, certain types of humour in different industries. So even with
Yeah.
actors, there'll be sort of
Of
humour while they're
course.
waiting for their turn in the set or whatever, and
Yeah, of
things like that.
course.
But it wasn't. It was unacceptable, and even the managers started at that time putting policies
Hmm.
in where there wasn't before, to try and stop all that, because they want to recruit more black and female firefighters in
Right.
the fire service.
Yeah.
So it was, well, if there's racism and blah blah blah, and some people were getting a sack for it. And obviously for the women, it wasn't an environment that they could go straight into, because of
No.
the way,
Yeah.
they're fighting for other issues, like obviously, separate changing rooms, or
Yeah, of
locker rooms and
course.
toilets and things like that, because that wasn't up to date.
Wow.
They were behind. They're still in the 70s, but then that was only like 10 years later
Yeah.
that I joined. So they were still kind of wrapped up in 60s, 70s kind of living.
Wow.
So yeah, I mean, then I started just hearing the kind of discourse and undertones of
Mm.
racism, and I just thought, well, this isn't right, really. And I was getting bullied, which I know how it feels to be bullied. And some of it is like school playground type bullying. It's not like
Mm.
adult world kind of like, well, just teasing a bit, adult teasing. Some of it was like school,
Wow.
so it was like that. It was really
So how did you navigate that?
Well, I did what I thought was supposed to happen, which, you sort of tell the direct line man. Well, you speak out first, which I did. Well, I don't think blah 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 is right, and blah blah blah. And then they're kind of saying, "What are we talking about?" Blah, blah. Then from there
Mm.
it got a bit kind of nasty, and then I thought, well, this is getting too much. I'll have to let the line manager know about this. And then from there, I went to see someone a little bit above the line manager, who was in charge of the whole fire station. Then he was sort of trying to push it back a bit on me and saying, well, you got to be, uh, you got to really tolerate it. That's what you're saying. That's how you turn it
Wow.
around. And then I don't know. Luckily, there was I got involved with a trade union about 5 years later, because it got, a bit nuts. Because one of the other things that happens is rumor mongering. So it gets spread to other stations. I changed stations, and then the rumor mongering obviously spreads. Follows you.
Mm.
These are the sort of things that happen, especially if you bring a complaint up. But it wasn't a total complaint. It was like, I don't think this is right. From
Yeah.
speaking to the crew to that, and then I realised all that. That this is the kind of pattern of what happens. It goes horizontally, following you everywhere, not just only from management fostering that
Right.
bullying culture. You
Oof.
know. And the other thing was, they wanted to make the policy so that, well, actually, we're not going to tolerate any racism. So even if you bring up racism, and there was some, it's like, well, when that doesn't happen in our thing, you're lying. That's the kind of thing that goes on.
It's your
So
word against theirs.
there's that, yeah. But also they turn it around to sweep it under the
Mm.
rug, so to speak, because it's like, no, the fire service, how can that possibly happen? We've got blah blah blah, this is happening, and so it
Well,
was like that.
I mean, it's funny you say that because even when we were just, prepping for today's conversation and you mentioned, the racism experienced within your career as a firefighter, I
Yeah.
was actually horrified that that was even a thing.
That's the reason why, because there still was pockets of it. Also, it's a generic, bullying culture towards minority groups. Really, I think that's what it is, as well as a bullying culture in general, because it was, even without any
Yeah.
characteristics, so it just had a strong bullying culture. It's just like that. Of course, I have memories of school days of not really wanting to be around people that was really,
Yeah.
you know, going over the top with their teasing and stuff like that. It's the difference. There's a fine line, isn't there, of
There is a
having fun
fine
and then,
line. Yeah.
and making sure you don't have stuff over it to make it, you know.
So do you think it's a cultural thing?
It was a cultural thing, yeah. So it's what they know as a fire brigade culture, or watch culture, because watches is the name of the shift you work on. So I'm on this watch,
Right.
I'm on that watch. So it's kind of what they call fire brigade watch culture.
Wow.
That's, yeah, that was a cultural thing. And then I don't know what was happening with management, but they were now on a transformation of trying to change all that. You see, so
Phew,
yeah,
that's hair
yeah, it was,
raising. I mean,
yeah,
look, we are definitely living in a day where racial discrimination is still very much alive.
yeah,
We've seen the rise, obviously, of Black Lives Matter, throughout
yeah,
2020. So there is a cry across the earth for racial equality. Now, you sent me a couple of links. I noticed an article from the BBC that you forwarded to me, which I'll just share with the audience. That just in
yeah, yeah.
January of this year, the BBC put out an article that talks about the fire services in England being marred by a toxic culture.
Yes, yeah. So
For
the toxic culture is a generic kind of bullying culture that they kind of fostered. Which, as I say, when I joined, it was kind of like, now it was in a position where management saying we've got to do something about this. Whereas before that, in the 70s and 80s, they weren't
Yeah.
really doing much about it. But
No, it
it's,
was just a joke, wasn't it, back
yes, yeah.
then?
But people were bullied then as well. I mean, it was
Right.
just kind of like bullying in schools has been going on for generations, isn't it? So
Absolutely.
it's kind of like that. So, but they didn't do anything about it. But then it started, from when I joined, 1990, maybe just before that, even, and you can see with that article in January that nothing's been done about it.
Right, right. I mean, I was horrified by the other article that you sent me in the Metro. It says here the mother of a London firefighter says she believes her son took his own life because he was being bullied and was a victim of racism. Jaden Francois Esprit was found hanged in his home in Wapping, East London, 3 weeks after his 21st birthday. He had been training to be a firefighter at Wembley Station, where his mother, Linda Francois, said he was singled out for being the only person of color.
Yeah. So I mean, I was in that position, well, actually. yeah, I was the only person kind of on my watch, you know, I mean, in the shift I was
Mm.
working on, but there was one more black firefighter and another watch. So we didn't really speak much because we were like literally on the opposite end. So the 4 days I worked, he was never there, and the 4 days he
Right.
worked, I wasn't there. So we only saw each other changing over the
Right.
different 4 days. So we didn't really never had a chat. But that's the treatment I had when I told you I was raising it with the managers when I first joined as a trainee myself. And you know, that's the sort of, when you see that denial comment, oh, we didn't notice any sense of loss of well-being, we weren't aware of any bullying and blah, blah. That's what they say. That's what they say. So this is kind of what happened with me, the sweeping under the carpet thing. And like you say,
That's
the public don't expect that from the fire service, and maybe the police, yeah,
no.
because the police are in touch with the public all the time. Firefighters
Right.
don't, you know, you don't really see firefighters in the same way on the streets as police. You know, if something goes wrong, you normally call the police. If
Right.
it's a fire, you won't see them because we're busy putting out the fire or doing
Yeah.
something with the incident. You know.
Exactly. But I think also society's view of firefighters is that of heroism, you know,
Yeah, yeah, and it is true. It's true. The actual general camaraderie and wanting to be like that. You know,
is there.
yeah, that side of it is very professional in that sense. But you know,
It's the
internally,
underlying.
yeah,
Yeah.
internally, the way the staff's being treated, you know, by some, I should say, but then there's still a culture because it can spread within some people that are complicit to the bullies.
Yeah.
You know,
Absolutely.
so it becomes a cultural thing in terms of it spreading with other people, and it's, oh,
Yeah.
this is normal. It's not, you know. And then so that's the problem, and then that isn't what the public sees. That
No.
isn't what the public's going to see, you know. So of course, where your humanitarians out in the public's eye, you're not humanitarian when something like that happens, where someone,
Yeah.
I mean, the suicide rate's got up anyway in terms of what the things you see when you go to severe incidents. You know, even
Yeah.
that one incident or drip drip from the smaller incidents you go to, there is a risk of PTSD
Of course.
and suicide, and it's actually been a big concern with in the US. I know it's, you know, really big. It's took over the line of duty death, meaning the death from actual fire. It's
Wow.
less than the suicide rate. The suicide rate is higher.
Oh my
I think for cops
gosh.
it's even higher, but you can see they
Oh
got some stuff to
man.
sort out in the US as well.
Yeah, for sure. But
Yeah,
then
but
something has to change.
yeah, but you know, there's good cops out there as well. You know, I mean, I've had friends that joined the police, and you know that some of I know have fought
Yeah.
racism within the police. You know, but they still
Right.
wanted to be a cop. And so you know, it's a case that it's just the culture, isn't it? Really, and then
Absolutely. Yeah,
that's what.
absolutely.
That's what
But okay, but look, I think here's where I'm going is if I were to be heading up a fire department in London
yeah,
and I was listening in on this conversation, I can tell you now, I would be on the phone to you saying, I want you to come and I want you to look at my department and I want you to come and see where the gaps are, see where the issues are. But how would you then help us change this whole culture of, you know, banter that involves racism that actually
yeah.
ultimately leads to a young 21-year-old committing suicide, having been in it yourself?
I suppose it has to happen top bottom because there was a report before.
Yeah.
There've been several reports. There was a report before I joined. I think in the 70s. There was another one 10 years after I joined in 1999 called a thematic report of the fire service. And
Yeah.
of course, this one now.
But you're right, it has to flow from the top. Like
Yeah,
if it's okay at management level and you're being told, "Oh, you've just got to tolerate it," then nothing
yeah,
is going to change because everything is infiltrated from the top.
yeah. But the thing with bullying is that, you know, it's people will see it because it's in any job, but obviously it's severe in, you know, jobs like the fire service.
Yeah.
Is that it's more of a occupational hazard because bullying's everywhere. You know, bullying, you hear about bullying everywhere in school, you know, and then again, it's seen as a hazard because how do you, you know, with bullying, it
Yeah.
can happen from one individual to a group of people, or from a group of people to one individual.
Yeah.
You know, and it doesn't, irrespective. I'm just saying group as, you know,
Yeah.
irrespective of characteristic. You know, I mean, gender, race, age, you know, that kind of thing. So, uh,
Yeah.
something else, as much as you give the education at the bottom, meaning, you know, giving it to the workers on the ground, um,
Yes.
how do you make that, how do you implement it and make sure
Absolutely.
you can't sack everyone. You know,
No.
you know,
No.
things like that. And obviously you don't want something like suicide to happen. And
No.
there was another colleague, I think I gave you another link to a colleague that worked on the same shift of mine.
Yeah.
And what happened there was that I worked on the shift that, this is Jason Toll, the one. You saw
Yep.
the other article.
Yep.
I worked on that shift before he came to work there. He got transferred from Shoreditch, where he made a tribunal case.
Right.
And then I left there and made a complaint about that watch. And then they sent him on that watch. And then he sent them to tribunal. He got a big payout. I can say that now. But,
Yeah.
it's like, it was an undisclosed amount, but I think it was a hell of a lot. It probably covered the rest of his pension for the rest of his life.
Right.
But
Right.
the thing is, you know, I was surprised that they put him on the same shift as me when I already said there's a problem here.
I think that's just it, right? As until it comes to the light, then how do we deal with things, right? For as long as it's hidden,
Yeah.
then there is no dealing with it. But it's coming out. It's
Mm.
being, you know, it's obviously in the spotlight at the moment, more and more.
Yes.
And yeah, I mean, things have got to change. They cannot carry on as they are. But how do we implement that change? It's tough because listening to your story, I'm like, oh my gosh, it's almost like the bullies in the playground from when you were little are now in the
Yeah, yeah.
management
That's the
positions.
thing. Yeah, that's the other thing that happens. That's the other thing that does happen is that they do get promoted. In fact, they get disciplined first and get promoted. It's like,
Right.
how the hell did you get?
Right. Yeah, but I
That's
think
the
part of the
thing.
challenge with society is that we go, oh, well, he's strong. He knows what he wants. You
Yeah,
know,
no,
he's
yeah,
not
yeah,
willing to tolerate any nonsense. So he's naturally going to promote himself or be promoted up into the top dog positions.
yeah,
Meanwhile, he was actually the bully in the playground who, you know, was
yeah. That's
just
right. Yeah.
was following
Well, what
dad's.
tends to happen is saying, "Oh, yeah, I remember him. He was a bully. He was a bit of this, but he's calmed down a bit now. He's done the management because when you're in management, you're pulled out of that environment, you know, the
Right.
culture a bit. But you're still part
Right.
of the fire brigade culture, as in the management side now.
Yeah.
So how they deal with it is, if they're sweeping it under the rug, that's a culture of it as well, a culture of
Exactly.
doing that. Yeah. So
Yeah, exactly. But I think also then once it comes out from under the rug, what are we doing with it on it? Because it demands action, right? We can talk about it until we're blue in the face, but at the end of the
yeah, yeah.
day, there has to be some outworking of change.
Yes, yeah. There's two things, as I say, there's the bullying culture, which is really, as you know, it's like, oh, this is part of the job kind of thing. Then
Yeah.
there's racism, which is
Yeah.
like, no, that can't possibly be a bit of fire service. Look, the public loves us, blah, 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 because all you see is a humanitarian side,
Yeah.
which when you see the toxic, you know, in England's fire service article, you know that
Yeah.
now, you know, it's obviously exposed now that, well, actually this happens inside and they're not so
Inside.
humanitarian when it happens to us inside, which
Yeah.
obviously, you know, the worst case scenario is what
Yeah.
happened with Jaden, you know. So
Right.
the fact is, that's two things to do with it. And of course it is also institutionally sexist as well. So Black Lives Matter can only help in a certain way in terms of, well, okay, let's look at the corporations, look at this, blah blah blah, that, because even they're saying we've still got a way to go.
Yeah.
You know, like even though 50 years ago there was a civil rights movement and you
Yeah.
know things were being done, we changed the law in terms of, you know, like apartheid. You changed the law in terms of, you know, sitting on one side of the bus and the other on the other.
Yeah.
In institutions like fire service and even the police, you know, it's a slightly different thing. You know, it's kind of hidden in a way, isn't it? Really, it's
Yeah.
not. You know, it's a
Yeah.
hidden.
What's your advice then to the person who maybe is in this situation where they're experiencing racism on a day to day basis that's hidden inside the confines of their work environment, or sexism, or whatever it might be? What do you
Yeah,
want to
yeah,
say to those people?
yeah. Raise it. Speak about it to someone and raise it. So
Agree.
it's difficult to find, but I built a network, and then when I got involved with the trade union, I built more of a network. And
Yeah.
as much as the depression and anxiety was trying to kick in,
Right.
and then on top of what we have to deal with the job, and it was very busy when I joined. You know, the fires has gone lower, but you know,
Yeah.
you have got to look after yourself. So do things like
Absolutely.
you don't have to get into full on mindfulness. Just do some breathing, learn about breathing. Because I did sports, you see, so I can
Yes.
continued it on because I wanted to keep fit for the fire service. But then found that was an outlet for me, so I just
Wow.
carried on competing, and I had a social network there as well. Although they didn't understand what's going on, and you know, well,
Yeah.
some probably did, but you know, so you know, that kept me. I learned about personal development from there as well, and learn about, you know, sports psychology in terms of, you know, getting rid of
Yeah.
competition and doing the meditation and mindfulness and
Yeah.
visualization. So I'm not saying go full on with that, but that sort of thing, it is kicking in with firefighting training now anyway. They're telling them
It's
about
good.
stress management from training when they start the first as trainees now.
Yeah.
Just make sure, you know, all round.
Self-care is so
Self-care, that's it.
important.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
So, so important.
So when you feel yourself losing it in that sense, just look at self-care as well. That's the main thing. So you can, you know, mindfulness will help
Absolutely.
get you your mind away from that and just stay in the present and stay grounded.
Yeah, absolutely. It's almost
Really,
like
really.
your journey though, in school with the bullying, but even in your career as a firefighter, dealing with racism, it's actually kind of equipped you to be the resilience coach that you are now, where you're
Yeah,
training people and equipping people with these tools that you've learned over the years and have had to adapt over the years. You're
yeah.
now able to equip others. I think that's just brilliant.
Yeah. Well, what it is that I was doing some fitness coaching for. Well, I went to the athletics track and started to I did this thing called the Sports Leader Awards thing. So it's kind of
Amazing.
like the beginning of doing a coaching thing.
Yeah.
So, but because of the mindset side of things, I started getting more into that. And then I started reading a lot of personal development because of what was happening at work. And I thought, well,
Great.
find out about that kind of like management type thing.
Yeah.
Then I started doing NLP, and that got combined with sports coaching a lot. Then I started
Wow.
looking more with the severe side of, because I started feeling the symptoms when I stopped my training and things were going wrong.
Wow.
I looked more at my well-being as a person with what happened more with the fire service rather than, I weren't doing
Yeah.
sports then. But then I felt, well, I needed to still keep that side of it up because that was like a
Yep.
lifeline for me,
Yep.
So and I think when you look back at right from when I when first started winning at school days, it gave me
Wow.
self-esteem. So I think
Absolutely.
find something that gives you self-esteem, because not everyone wants to do running. It's boring to a lot of people I talk to, but if you enjoy something else physically, if you play basketball
Absolutely.
or football, do that. It's going to keep
Yeah.
you, and you also got a group of people around you and things like that.
Absolutely. Man, it's been such an interesting conversation. I have really enjoyed this talk with you.
Yeah.
How can people get hold of you, get hold of your book even?
Yeah, well, everything's on my website, which is
Okay.
more geared towards my podcast. Because since the lockdown, I've been more online, and the podcast has got really
Yep.
busy. Although
Fantastic.
doing the online coaching, which I'm trying to build.
Congratulations. That's
So
awesome.
you can go to davepalmah.com, which is DAVEPAMAH.com. And then basically everything will be there. And the first
Yeah.
things you'll see is the episodes of my podcast, because
That's
as I say, that's the main thing I'm doing
Yeah,
really.
that's
So
fantastic. That's brilliant.
yeah,
Okay, well, I'll make sure, guys, that all the information to Dave is included in the description field of today's podcast. I'll also make sure all his social media links are there. So before we close, Dave,
yeah.
we're going to close with on your marks, get set, go,
Yeah.
which is, I think, quite appropriate for you.
Yeah, yeah. Well,
Um,
you got me all nervous now. I think I'm in a race. It's
yeah,
like,
yeah, yeah. All
I
right,
haven't done this for a
so
long time. I'm getting all psyched up now. Go on, I'm ready. I'm ready.
okay, you got to run around the block. No, I'm kidding. All right,
Yeah, okay.
here we go. Okay, so we're going to do 10 personal questions that you have
All
to
right.
answer as quickly as possible. Okay,
Oh, wow. Okay. Okay.
timer is on. Okay, are you ready?
Yep. Ready.
Set. On your marks, get set, go. What's the latest TV show that you have been binging on?
That's a good question. I haven't really been watching TV, so
Oh my gosh, you have a life.
YouTube. So
What's
yeah.
your favorite sport?
Well, I suppose athletics really, because I've
Oh,
been doing that. Yeah.
obviously. What's your favorite meal?
I did like my rice and peas on a Sunday, so I still like that actually.
I love that.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay, paint us a snapshot of an everyday moment in your life that makes you smile.
Talking to wonderful people like you, so you can see I'm smiling
Oh,
now.
oh, you're so
But
precious.
there's plenty of things that make me smile, and that's one thing people always said was, "Oh, Dave's got a nice smile," and things like that. And
You
when I'm
have
not,
a.
if I'm not smiling, I look miserable, so I have to try and keep smiling.
I have to say that to my husband every now and again, babe. Just
Ah, there you
smile
are.
because you look a little fierce.
Yeah, yeah. I don't have a kind of neutral look, so it's one or the other.
Okay, who is your favorite human on the planet?
Well, there's a few, but I'll say people like Nelson Mandela.
Yeah,
Yeah, I'll just say
yeah,
that. Yeah.
love that. Okay, what's your favorite animal?
Man's best friend's a dog, so I'll
Yeah.
just say a dog. Yeah.
Okay, what do you think of garden gnomes?
I don't think they have any place on this earth at all. Get rid of them. No, no. I don't really have really thought about them. I just don't. I don't see any point in them being there. But I think there's a reason for it, isn't there? There is a reason for garden gnomes.
There is?
Yeah, I think so. Anyway. For me, I don't know. It seems pointless, but I'm sure there is a reason for it.
You know, we're all going to be Googling this now.
We are. We are. Even me, I'm going to be Googling now. I said that.
What's the purpose of the garden gnome? Okay,
Yeah,
are you a tea or coffee drinker?
Coffee drinker, I'd say, yeah.
Oh, you are not English. At
no.
all.
You've disappointed me now. Disappointed me.
Okay, how do you handle stress?
Well, doing what I'm doing with the well, the main way is just the breathing, the visualization of mindfulness and things like that, and exercise. Exercise releases endorphins, and then doing something I enjoy.
Love it.
So being on this podcast, I'm enjoying that.
Yeah.
Podcasting actually.
Absolutely. Yeah, for
do something
sure.
you enjoy. Yeah.
Okay, and lastly, what are you most grateful for in your life?
I'm grateful to wake up every morning and say, thanks, alive and seeing another day, and just having life here.
Yeah, I love that. Well, Dave, thank you so much for being on the show. I really appreciate you, and I'm sure we will talk again soon.
Yeah, sure, definitely. And thanks for having me.